Pentecost is a very important, I think, celebration for us, and it has a very important concept or idea that we hopefully need to take in, because it's very important for our faith. And it's important to understand, first of all, what happens at Pentecost. And I was sharing this with our confirmation students this year, but just kind of a brief summary of this. When we look at what has been going on leading up to Pentecost Sunday, throughout the 50 days of Easter, for the most part, the apostles have spent their time locked in a room. And they're hiding. And for good reason. They're hiding from those who put Jesus to death. Because those who put Jesus to death were looking to stomp out the movement, not just taking Jesus out, but taking out his followers as well, and most notably his apostles. And so they knew that, and we hear that in the gospel today. The apostles were gathered together and the doors were locked for fear of the Jews. And with confirmation students, we go through and look at this, how that says this in about 4 or 5 different spots throughout the Bible. The Acts of the Apostles and the Gospels as well, that they're locked up in this room. So they spent about 50 days hiding, locked away, and again, for good reason. And what happens is, on Pentecost Sunday, which we hear about in our first reading, where the Holy Spirit comes down upon them, again, because they're gathered together in this room, doors locked. The Holy Spirit comes down upon them, and they literally go out of this room after receiving the Holy Spirit and start preaching about Jesus. The person who they were afraid to talk about for the last 50 days, they're now out yelling on the rooftops about Jesus. And not only that, what we hear later in the Acts of the Apostles, the follow-up, where as if you would keep reading in the Acts of the Apostles, this is the best part. The apostles literally from that locked room, they go out and they start yelling from the rooftops about Jesus, and then they march down the street to the Jewish temple. Now the temple is the home base of the Jews, the home base of the people who are trying to kill the apostles. And if you really want a good chuckle, read the speech that Peter gives from the steps of the temple. He says, "Now I know that you killed Jesus out of ignorance." It's a great way to start it with your enemies, right? "I know you're all morons. I know you did this out of ignorance. I know you killed Jesus." And he goes on and he basically says, "But there's hope, and you need to give your life to Christ, and he has already forgiven you," and so on and so forth. They give this speech. St. Peter gives this speech flanked by the apostles, and they're standing there and they're saying, and they're doing the things that they were afraid to do minutes earlier. And I think there's a really important lesson for us in that. All of us who have been confirmed, that is Pentecost for us. That's what the church says. Confirmation equals Pentecost. So in your confirmation, you received the same Holy Spirit that the apostles receive at Pentecost. And if we let it, if we get out of the way of the Holy Spirit and don't stifle it and block it, it's supposed to have the same effect on us. The Holy Spirit is supposed to, if we allow it, transform us into people who were afraid to say anything at all about Jesus, to being people who will go out to anyone and talk about it at any time. Talk about Christ, talk about the message, talk about the church, etc. I was thinking about this, and a song lyric popped into my head, and it's a song actually that I don't like hardly at all. And it was a song it was on the radio a lot last summer, and I have a couple of teenage sisters, so I'm going to go ahead and blame the fact that I know this song on them, even though that may not be fair. I may have actually tuned into it myself on accident once or twice. But it was a song by last summer, and I think it was last summer, and it was kind of this teeny bopper song. And it was just over and over again, this girl is singing about how she says, "I don't care." So she's like, "I don't care." And she's talking about like all of these things that she does about how she doesn't care. She's like, I crashed my car into a bridge. I don't care. And that literally, like, it seems like it repeats like 90 times during the song. And so it's in your head for life once you hear the song one time. And I think that and the reason I bring it up is because I think it does very nicely kind of summarize maybe the way some people view the world. And when she's saying, I don't care, what she means is obviously like, I do whatever I want. I'm in charge of my own life. No one else can tell me what to do. If I crash my car into a bridge, whatever, who cares? It's all about me. I don't care. And I was thinking about the reason I think that lyric popped into my head because I was thinking about at the completely opposite end of the spectrum, from selfishness, it's about me, I do whatever I want, is the apostles after Pentecost. And they also, though, say the same thing in a way, but with a completely different meaning. The apostles stand up and say, when they receive the Holy Spirit, they stand up for the first time and they say something. They say, I don't care. I don't care anymore. But they don't mean I don't care, like I do whatever I want. They mean I don't care what happens to me. I don't care. I don't care about myself. I don't care about my time. I don't care about if people want to torture me, if people want to throw me into jail, you want to kill me, whatever. I don't care. That's what the Holy Spirit does to us if we let it. It turns us into people who don't care. And if we look at the fate of all of the apostles, we see what happens when you do that. When you allow the Holy Spirit to work, all of the apostles were martyred, except for St. John, who was imprisoned for life on an island and exiled. But we see, when we read the Acts of the Apostles, you see men who don't care. They go to the ends of the earth. They leave their families. They leave their friends. They don't care anymore because they've encountered Jesus Christ and they've received His Holy Spirit. It's interesting that the apostles several times even meet the resurrected Jesus throughout the Easter season, but they're still afraid. But when they receive the Holy Spirit, they're transformed into people who don't care. And I would say that maybe you, myself, I know I was certainly that way. When I received the sacrament of confirmation, I had no idea what was going on. I did not know it was Pentecost, and I don't think I really knew what it meant. And so I was sort of it took me a while to understand and get out of the Holy Spirit's way. But I think that for the most part, I've started to see that the Holy Spirit, when I get out of the way, when I become the grain of wheat that actually falls to the ground and dies, and stop clinging to the branch and trying to do it my way and be selfish and worry about my time or worry about this or worry about what I want, when I let go and fall to the ground and die, as we're called to do that all the time, I've realized that I've become a person in those moments when I am living like I ought, that I don't care anymore. When I was in the seminary, I used to think, well, what's going to happen when people come up and they yell at me about a homily, or they get upset about this church teaching or that church teaching? And it was really interesting as that it didn't happen a lot. I don't think it's ever happened here. Thank you. No, you're welcome to. But it was really interesting. I remember a couple times I had, people would come up and yell at me about a church teaching or something like that in the first few years of the priesthood, and I would just sit there and be like, this is interesting. I probably should care right now that this person's yelling in my face, but I don't care. Like, I want what's best for this person, and I want to listen, and I listen and hear what you're saying, but at the end of the day, I'm doing what the church asks, and I don't really care what happens to me. I don't care about whatever. I don't care about shame. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm here to do the work of Christ and to teach and spread the teachings of the church. Pentecost turns us into people, if we let it, who don't care anymore. Who don't care about what we need, what we want to do with ourselves. May we allow the Holy Spirit to do that and affect that and make us into those people, martyrs, saints, whatever it is. May the Holy Spirit come down upon us and transform us into people who no longer care about what we need or want. May we be people who leave this church on fire with the Holy Spirit, no longer caring about what it is that we need or want, because we now know that our Redeemer lives and that He has sent and given to us the gift of His Spirit.